coming through when the growth look good on you. Best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep fitting in love.
Yes, guys, it's G, and we are back in the building today. We are back. So much going on at Liverpool Football Club, so much news, so much reports. There's a lot going around, man. There's a lot going around. As you guys can obviously see below, the title of the video is called The Pep Effect. Now, before we even dive into that, guys, please make sure that you are liking. Please make sure you have subscribed to the channel. I'm going to be doing a lot of hot takes, a lot of conversations are going to be had, you know, throughout this month. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot to talk about in regards to Liverpool Football Club. You know, things, all is not well, you know, at Liverpool Football Club. Everything surrounding the club, the energy around the club, the fan base, you know, the team, the performances, you know, the Premier League kind of performances, everything surrounding the football club, you know, especially during the month of January where, you know, transfers, rumours and things like that. So please stay tuned and make sure that you are subscribing to the channel. So, as I said, the title of the video is called The Pep Effect. Sorry, guys, unfortunately, I don't mean Pep Guardiola. Obviously, I'm talking about our assistant manager, Pep Lijnders. So, I was contemplating how to kind of do this type of video in regards to Pep Lijnders. You know, if you see me on the book club on This Is Football on Don Hussein's channel, you know, we obviously spoke about Pep Lijnders' book, Intensity, that came out a little while ago. We, you know, went through the book and, you know, we spoke about, you know, the things that were said in the book and things like that. And, you know, a lot of you who did tune into that, you know, I saw a lot of comments. A lot of people were, would I say, claiming that, you know, we were almost using that as an excuse, and it was kind of trivial that we were using, you know, a book, so to speak, you know. So to even just explain that again, I don't think, well, not even I don't think, I know it wasn't necessarily about, you know, a book. I think that in itself is quite futile. That in itself isn't something that, you know, anyone would concern themselves with. At the end of the day, it's just a book, you know, so to speak. You know, every book obviously has context, and, you know, this isn't this ain't the Harry Potter series. You know, you're not reading the book to, you know, find out what happens to Harry and Lord Voldemort at the, you know, at the end of it. You know, this ain't an adventure book. You know, this ain't a children's educational book. You know, this is a book about, you know, from our assistant manager, talking about, you know, last season, you know, everything that went on, you know, on for the quadruple and things like that. But if you've actually read the book, and this is very, very key, because I know a lot of people haven't actually read the book. I know a lot of people have just taken like snippets that they might have seen from here and there and then formed an opinion about the book. Whether they like it or dislike it, it's going to be very difficult for you to have an overall opinion on something that you haven't fully read, you know. So that's why we, you know, we did the book club, because we were interested as well. We wanted to know, you know, we hadn't read the book prior to doing the book club. You know, we went throughout the weeks, speaking about, you know, certain quotes and things that were said in there. And, you know, and of course, it's a book at the end of the day. So, of course, some of it has got to be taken with a pinch of salt. Now, which bits, that's then down to, you know, that's subjective. You know, that's always going to be subjective. Everyone's going to read everything differently. You know, you read these self-help books. Some people take certain things from self-help books. Some people take different meanings from self-help books, and et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's all subjective. And even what I'm going to talk about today, it's all subjective. You know, I'm not sitting here going to say, I hate Pep Lijnders and, you know, this, that, and you know, it's irrelevant at the end of the day, because ultimately he's our assistant manager. So he's the guy that's, you know, alongside our manager, Jurgen Klopp. But, you know, the two go hand in hand. Bit like how, you know, Pep Guardiola, I think, I'm not going to, don't quote me on this, I'm sure Mikel Arteta was the assistant manager. If not, he was obviously a part of the coaching staff there, whilst he was at Manchester City before he took that job at Arsenal. I think, as I said, the two go hand in hand. Have been ever since Buvac left. Now, for those who haven't watched Jerry James' show, the Buvac Conundrum, please go and watch that show. That's where, myself and Jerry and I think Roms, that's where we do speak about, a lot in regards to the effect that Buvac had whilst he was at the football club before he abruptly left. I think it was the 2018-19 season, before the Champions League final, I believe. Again, don't quote me on that. I think it was then, but I might have just got my dates wrong. But, he left abruptly, and it was a bit like, whoa, like, what's going on here? And at that time, we weren't really privy to any kind of details. We didn't really understand what was going on. And I don't think we even really, I don't want to say we didn't really care, but it definitely wasn't something that we were all looking at and thinking, oh my goodness, he's left. What's going on? I don't think we really, as Liverpool fans, I personally anyway, I don't think we even really understood the kind of effect that he did actually have on the team, in the way that we were playing and things like that, especially in that season. That was a lot of it was down to Buvac. Through his coaching and, tactical nous and, all of these kind of various things. So obviously Pep Lijnders then got promoted. He did spend some time away from the football club, got relegated, I believe, with is it NEC in the Dutch league. Came back, then got promoted to the assistant manager once Buvac left. And then, since then, Liverpool have gone on to then win all these trophies. So, I can understand, when people were saying, when people were using that as the kind of positive of having someone like a Pep Lijnders around. Of course, if he's any, we can't blame one individual for anything that's gone wrong, and we can't praise one individual when things go right. It is a collective, and I mean the owners in that as well. When things go right, everybody gets praised. If things go wrong, everybody should be criticized. It's not just necessarily one individual, unless obviously one individual is making fundamental mistakes, then of course it's going to be boiled down to them. But in regards to Pep Lijnders, I've seen a lot in the last, since Liverpool played Brentford, but more so in the last couple of weeks, especially before Christmas and things like that, and it has amped up since that defeat to Brentford. I think mostly because of what Jamie Carragher said on Sky Sports after the game, speaking about Pep Lijnders and the effect that he's got potentially on the team. Again, we don't really know, and this is key in itself. We don't really know. We're just kind of guessing, but at the same time, with certain reports and things coming out, we're kind of we're building a puzzle. We're building that puzzle at the moment. Whether we've got all the right pieces in the right place, I don't know. And nobody's gonna know, other than the people who are actually there. But that's why I wanted to kind of talk about, Pep Lijnders and, the future and things like that. So, like I said, Pep Lijnders was a part of the coaching staff, and I believe he was an integral part of the coaching staff that helped us obviously win the Premier League, and all those trophies. I would say from 1920, I would say that's when the real effect of Pep Lijnders kind of, would I say, kicked in more so. Maybe it was just more of a case of Jurgen Klopp started to trust him a lot more, especially with signings and things like that. And we're also seeing things like, what's happening recently in terms of, Julian Ward is going to leave, and, various other backroom staff in the higher ups are also leaving. And we're looking at the situation, and one thing I don't like is that the sheer fact that a lot of people are almost placing all the blame on him. And then you can't place all the blame on him. If, as people keep telling me, Jurgen Klopp has the final say, then the reality is you can't blame Pep Lijnders, because he's just the guy who might, give his recommendation towards something. If the manager then agrees with that recommendation, you've got to look at both of them. As I said, they go hand in hand. So if they're going hand in hand, then you can't just look at one individual and say, oh, it's all his fault. That wouldn't make any real sense. But at the same time, he is having that growing influence in the squad. He's one of the key reasons why we bought a Diaz, a Nunez, and we bought Gakpo. He's mentioned that Gakpo, from reports, he's mentioned that Gakpo was a missing link, you know, in the forward line, and that's a player that we definitely should be in for. If we can get him, then we should definitely get him. That was, again, his recommendation. I don't think that that was a Klopp thing. I don't think, not to say Klopp wasn't looking at him, of course. You know, he's a very good young player, you know, been doing well recently, especially in the last 18 months. You know, he's been on the radar of a lot of top clubs as it is. So I'm not going to sit here and say Klopp didn't know who Gakpo was and, you know, it was just Pep Lijnders. He brought him in and he thought, yeah, fuck it, let me just work with it. No. It's more of a case of, you know, Pep Lijnders would have been the guy to really recommend him to Klopp, you know, especially, you know, looking at the way that we play and things like that. And, you know, we know that, you know, it's Pep Lijnders at the, well, we don't know, but again, from what we're led to believe, we are being told that, you know, Pep Lijnders is the guy who's in training. Again, read the book. The book will give you a better insight. I do actually recommend people, much as I don't really like Pep Lijnders like that, I do recommend people to read that book, because you will get a bit of a, for me, reading that book, it just gave me more of an insight into what really goes on in training, you know, how things are really done. Not everything, of course. He's not going to reveal every single detail, but he did reveal quite a lot of what he does, you know, at the club, and, you know, the influence that he's had in and around the place, you know. So, you know, you're looking at this Jurgen Klopp team. You know, Jamie Carragher asked or said on Sky Sports, you know, this doesn't look like a Jurgen Klopp team. Is it Pep Lijnders? You know, with his influence in the club, in the team, you know, his recommendations and things like that. Is Pep Lijnders trying to, you know, one of the questions I was asking is Pep Lijnders being primed? And a lot of people have asked this: is he being primed to be the next Liverpool manager once Jurgen Klopp leaves? You know, that would be an easy appointment for the club. He definitely would have Jurgen Klopp's blessing. He knows the club. He's been at the club for a very long time. He knows the players. He knows what Liverpool's about. All these kind of things. This is all a positive for him. You know, these are all things that, of course, this is going to look good in his favour. So, you know, these are things that you've just got to think, and, you know, and then you're starting to think, okay, you know, for all of us who want a different type of manager, whoever that might be, whether it's Enrique, you know, Flick, Nagelsmann, Tuchel, whoever, that Zidane, whatever manager that you want, you know, that then leaves that in a bit of like, will Liverpool really go for these type of guys? Do Liverpool want to go for these type of guys? You know, FSG have got a certain kind of model, and they have a certain way of doing things. Pep Lijnders knows that way. So why would you go and, you know, outsource that to someone else who doesn't know the way, who hasn't worked under this way? Why not, you know, source it from within? So again, these are all positives. These are all the positives from that. So I'm looking at the whole Pep Lijnders thing, and, you know what, like I said, like I mentioned earlier on in regards to Pep Lijnders, we've got to, you know, you got to kind of take it back. You know, Jerry, like I said, Jerry did a show called The Buvac Conundrum. Watch that. And, you know, that's where we really delve into that, you know, into this whole thing. And this was done months ago. I think this was done maybe at the beginning of the season, if not in the summer. We were talking about this, and it's, you know, now it's funny because everything is now kind of coming up now. Oh my goodness, is this influence too much? But, you know, we were talking about this influence a long time ago. You know, we spoke of this said influence that he's apparently got now. So I don't even know what's actually happened in the last month, for example, that now all of a sudden everyone's, to be honest, I don't really know. Like, has everyone woken up, or is it a case of people are finally starting to see, you know, what's going on? Is it just because the reports are coming out a lot more? Are people just trying to, you know, place blame on someone because Liverpool are doing so badly? You know, we got to understand how the media works, guys. You know, I mean, we all know how media works. At the end of the day, it's going to get more views, it's going to sell papers, it's going to make money if it's a negative. We all know that negatives will make money all the time. You know, it's very rare that positives make money. It's always going to be a negative. So when things are going badly at Liverpool, of course, they need to place blame somewhere. And we all know that Jurgen Klopp's like a messiah over here. So it's unlikely that he's going to be placed, you know, any blame on him. So we need to find something else. Is it the owners? Is it Pep Lijnders have got too much influence? So as the results have gotten poorer and poorer and poorer, and Liverpool be doing worse and worse and worse this season, it just seems like now people are just potentially coming up with different reasons, different components as to, why, Liverpool are not doing so well this season. So that's the bit that I do find funny. But when Buvac left, like I said, I didn't really understand the influence that he had at that time, in the club. There was a biography by Raphael Hoinstein called Klopp Bring the Noise. And Buvac, he mentions here, I've got a quote here. He mentions here, Buvac gave the impression that he was not happy with, and this is in regards to, Buvac leaving and things like that. Buvac gave the impression that he was not happy with the increasing influence of the fourth assistant coach, Pep Lijnders. The relaxed, bright Dutchman had been very popular with the players. Obviously, he'd worked with some players, especially Trent Alexander-Arnold. He was one of the reasons as to why Trent actually made it into the, first team, recommendation again. The relationship between Buvac and Klopp had survived, but both just couldn't work together anymore. Now, something I did read, one of the reports I did read was that a lot of the players preferred Pep Lijnders, not because he was a better coach than Buvac, just more the sheer fact that he was someone that the players could get along with a lot more than a Buvac. Now, from my understanding, Buvac was a bit like I felt like he was a bit old school. He was a bit old school. Again, this is just from everything I'm just kind of gathering, and I don't fully know, but just from my perception of things, he seemed like he was a bit old school. He was someone who, he was just old school in his ways. Now that in a new school way of thinking, that might not always work. It's a bit like Jose Mourinho. He's very old school. He's part of that old school batch, the Sir Alex Fergusons and things like that, part of that kind of era. And when you move into this new era of football, things are totally different. You've got to do things in a completely different way. You've got to manage players in a completely different way. You've got to speak to players in a completely different way. You've got to deal with the media in a completely different way. You've got to watch what you say, because now eyes are everywhere. Before, yes, eyes were everywhere, so to speak, but, that was more just TV. Now you've got social media, if not, I'm sure it's one of the most powerful things out there in the world, so you definitely got to watch what you say and things like that. But I think it was just more of a case of the relationship with the players that Pep Lijnders had, which ultimately then turned into more of a, it's almost like it was more of a Buvac versus Pep, and you can only keep one of them now. The players are only going to accept one of them. They don't want to hear one voice, hear another voice, and then you've got the manager's voice. But then if the manager starts siding, subconsciously, he might just start siding with one individual, just that little bit more. It's going to create problems. And, maybe Buvac saw that and said, what, my time here is kind of done. I don't need to be here. But for me, when I look at the Pep and Buvac thing, on one side, like I said, you've got Pep. He's come in, we've won all these trophies, yada, yada, yada. Fantastic. Obviously, you've got Buvac. This is before we won all the trophies. I look at the style of play, and I look at the performances, and I look at what we were doing post Pep, and then after Pep, or whilst Pep is now currently here. And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking to myself, we speak a lot about Liverpool's style and things like that. If you watch the development from the day Jurgen Klopp came here till today, if you look at the development of Liverpool Football Club, in terms of the team's playing style and things like that, I felt like Liverpool played a lot better under Buvac. Again, this is just because of the years that it aligns with. I felt like Liverpool played a lot better then than we do now. I don't think we've played that well since Buvac has left, but ultimately, when you've got the trophies to show for it, does it really matter? That's an important thing. Does it matter? Because reality is, I don't care how we actually play, to be honest with you. If we're winning trophies, all the time, I'm good with that, But for me, what I'm slowly starting to see is that Buvac was more of just like the second in command kind of guy, and he knew his place and he knew his role. But his role was just maybe to get the team just playing potentially in this kind of, I don't want to say expansive way, but just in a way that was effective for the players that we had. Remember, the players that we had when Klopp came in, in regards, and then in comparison to the players that we've got today, it's obviously two different sets of players. We never had Van Dijk before. We've got Van Dijk now. We never had a Salah before. We've got Salah now. We never had a Nunez before. Before, now we've got Nunez now. Like, there's a lot of players in there that you're looking at and you're thinking, okay, we had an okay team, and I just felt like the football was, and the performances were a lot better than what we're seeing now. I'm not just talking about this season. Those who've watched me, listened to me, know I've been talking about this for ages. Heck, we'll take it back to when I was doing the Scousers in London thing. I was never really happy with the team and how they were performing. Even when we won the league, I wasn't really happy with the performances, so to speak, because I was like, you're not going to complain when you're winning the league and stuff like that. Of course not. You know what I mean? The negativity, so if we're going to call it that, the negativity around that is going to be a minority. Of course it would, because you're winning the league. You're going to sound and look crazy if you're complaining about something whilst you're winning, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? So, of course, that's going to sound like, oh, you're just moaning and things like that. But no, I like to look at things in, very meticulously, and I like to, delve into the detail of things. And the reality is, my opinion, I'm looking at things and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I'm not really feeling the way the team is playing. This doesn't really give me shades of a team who can be sustainable in the way that they are playing, unless, you've got, as we say, an owner who's just going to keep throwing money at it and we can just keep going again. If you can do that, then cool. But I'm talking about it from the factual evidence of, we've got these owners, this is how they behave. This is their model. So, okay, cool. We have to work within these kind of constraints. That's not a problem. It is what it is. Cool. That's a whole different story. If we're working within these constraints, do I feel that this is sustainable? No. We're now seeing that it's not sustainable. Even the sheer fact that we went on a quadruple run. I don't know about any other Liverpool fan. I know a few, but myself personally, and, I said this in private to a lot of people, I don't see us winning a quadruple. I don't think that that's something we would ever actually do, because I don't think we're good enough to do that. Regardless of the fact, yes, we were a point off. Yes, you can point to Courtois having this amazing game and blah, all the excuses. That to me is just excuses. At the end of the day, if you don't do something, then there's always going to be an excuse as to why you didn't do something. You didn't get that job. You're going to make an excuse as to why you didn't get that job. You just weren't good enough to get that job. That job was given to someone else. You just weren't the candidate that they wanted for that role. Ultimately not being good enough, for that role, because they chose someone else. That's not a problem. It's not, you don't have to blow that out of proportion. It just means that clearly that job just wasn't meant for me then. If I didn't get that, it just wasn't meant for me. And that's how I saw the Liverpool quadruple run, was that we just weren't good enough, in my opinion. Forget what we did, and ultimately, we got to the last day and all of that. That's all just make believe, so to speak. And obviously it happened, but I mean, make believe in terms of thinking that you were going to, win that Premier League. Manchester City dropped off. We were able to catch up, didn't win it. Again, we made the excuse of Courtois just had this absolutely amazing game, game of his life, and we just couldn't. But we had, I think, a lot of shots in that game, so poor finishing. Not able to, in my personal opinion, really break them down. If you look at the actual game again and rewatch it, you'll see where these shots were some of them were actually being taken from. We all remember the Navigator shot, it's little things like that. And again, not to discredit the team, because they did well. You did well, you did well to get to that point, but you just weren't good enough to go ahead and complete it, even to just win one of the big two trophies. We took Chelsea to the penalties. It's not like we were good enough. And if I'm being honest, I can't remember if it was the League Cup or the FA Cup. I can't remember which game it was, but it might have been the League Cup. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember watching the game and thinking, yeah, we do not deserve to win this at all. Chelsea are all over us. If they could just put their own chances away, that game could have finished 3-4-0. 4-1 potentially. I think we had a couple of minor chances. Can't remember if it was the League Cup though. It might have been the League Cup. But I just remember thinking to myself, wow, if Chelsea could just stay on side, if they just finish their chances. I remember Mason Mount having a chance hitting the post, and I just remember thinking, yeah, we do not deserve to win this, but ultimately we did win it, i.e. good enough to get over the line. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're good enough, you'll get over that line. That is all it is. That as simplistic as I can potentially make it, that's what it is. If you're good enough, you'll get over the line. Chelsea ultimately were not good enough. Forget all the missed chances. They missed. Ultimately, they missed. So clearly, you were not good enough. And Liverpool then were good enough to then put their penalties away, and then we won. You know, so that's me. That's just me. Again, my opinion and things like that on that. But you know, like I said, in regards to like the Buvac and the Pep thing, you know, we're seeing reports and stuff coming out recently. You know, Pep Lijnders and Klopp as well. This is not just Pep Lijnders and Klopp. Liverpool were, I saw this on the Telegraph. Liverpool offered the chance to sign Nkunku in the summer, but Klopp and Lijnders declined. The France international's positional flexibility meant he would have been a long-term replacement for Firmino. So for me, I look at that and I say to myself, okay, now again, my opinion, and quite a lot of other people's opinion, we wanted someone like an Nkunku. We felt that we needed a player like an Nkunku. You know, at first I was a little bit like, but then, you know, I started to warm to the idea, started to watch more of him. I started to understand his positions, understand the kind of player that he actually was. You know, unfortunate for him, he got injured, couldn't go to the World Cup. So I definitely would have loved to have seen, you know, how he would have fared there. But, you know, we're talking about a player, as I said, who would have been a replacement for a Firmino. You know, so, and someone who is seemingly on his way out of the football club. So now you're looking at it and you're thinking, wouldn't that been a better fit than, say, a Nunez, for example? You know, maybe you could have potentially got a Nunez and an Nkunku. That's not to say that that isn't another option, because it is. But I'm looking at I'm looking at that soul in isolation, and I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't that have been a better fit for the team? And the reason why I say that is because Firmino, still to this day, even though we are in 2023, he is still quite an important cog of this team, you know. And again, Pep Lijnders, Jurgen Klopp decided, you know, that he just didn't fit. Klopp has the final say ultimately. So if Klopp's got the final say, then, you know, it's going to fall on Klopp if things go left at the end of the day. But if you're getting recommendations from someone you trust clearly with your life, you know, if you're getting these kind of recommendations from that individual, then you're going to trust what he says. And if he says, nah, that's not maybe the guy, and he's then saying, you know, later on down the line that a Gakpo is the missing link, you know, again, not just as Gakpo might turn out to be amazing. So we don't know, because he hasn't actually played a game yet for Liverpool, but, you know, wait and see. But these are the kind of influences that I'm talking about, is that all of these influences have been there. I just think they're just coming out a little bit more because Liverpool are doing poorly. So might even sound like I'm defending him a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's just the truth. You know, if Liverpool were doing fantastically, would anyone be talking about the influence? You might be in a positive light, but because Liverpool are doing poorly, it's going to be seen as, oh, well, this guy is just doing this, that, and the third. And, you know, he does a lot of press conferences. We hear this guy a lot. You know, I don't know many assistant managers who speak as much as he does, but he seems to talk all the time for the club. You know, again, this is because Klopp trusts him enough to do these things. So, of course, if you're trusted enough, then, you know, not a problem. You know, so, you know, I just look at both things. But for me, the key was always how Liverpool play. And we're looking at how Liverpool play now, and we're seeing the profile of type of players that we're trying to sign, the profile of players that we do currently have. You know, you look at your Elliots, Carvalhos, your Joneses, your Thiagos and things like that. I mean, you're looking at all of these kind of pieces and you're thinking to yourself, is that something that Pep has tried to integrate into the team a little bit more, which could have been a positive if done correctly? So what I mean to say is that if Liverpool were able to implement a style that was then conducive for these players to be able to play, then we might be seeing a completely different Liverpool. But is that then different from the style that we know Klopp likes? Is that then completely, you know, different to what we know that Klopp likes, which is the engine midfield, you know, the midfield that likes to, you know, keep the ball press resistant, you know, give the ball to the players that like your Trents, your Robos and the attack to just go and do their thing. You know, we know the story about Gini Wijnaldum, you know, kind of disregarding Pep and Klopp's tactics in that game against Barcelona. Look how that turned out, you know. So, you know, it is quite funny. It is quite funny in that regards. to the kind of influence that, you know, Pep Lijnders is supposedly having on the squad. But is he being primed to be the next Liverpool manager? And that's the question I wanted to ask everybody here is, do you think he's just being primed to be the new manager once Klopp leaves? Again, like I said earlier in the video, you know, it'll be an easy appointment, knows the club, knows the players, knows what Liverpool's about. You know, if the club like him and he seems like, you know, he's a likable kind of character in and around the club. So if all of these things are falling into place, is that the manager that's going to take over? Is that someone that you would want to take over? I don't know. Some people might want that, you know, because of the continuity that he might potentially bring, you know, to the football club, and it would be an easier appointment. But some people, I know a lot of people that don't want that. So yeah, let me know in the comments, guys. Is that something that you would, you know, like to see? And again, I don't want this to be a thing of just blame this guy, because ultimately for me, it's the manager's door that we have to look at regardless of anything. You know, if he's listening to the assistant manager quite a lot, and the assistant manager seems to be the one who's, obviously he's in training, he's dealing with the players, you know, he's kind of trying to implement, you know, new tactics. You know, at the end of the day, he probably just recommended these tactics. But again, if Klopp then says, yeah, let's try it out, let's do it, and then let's keep trying to persist with it, it will come, it will come, it will come, it will come. That's the influence that, you know, Pep Lijnders is then bringing. So then what do you do? If it's not then working, what then happens? You know, ultimately it then falls on Klopp. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not saying Klopp's, you know, I'm not trying to absolve Klopp from any blame, because Klopp has a lot to do with what goes on at this football club. But the two go hand in hand. And that's the key. That's what I want people to take away from this, is that the two do go hand in hand. So if they go hand in hand, whatever Klopp's saying, Pep is saying, whatever Pep's saying, Klopp is saying. You know, Pep can't say nothing without the say-so from Klopp anyway. But Klopp is then taking some of that from Pep Lijnders anyhow and running with it. So, you know, it's a funny situation. And as I said, because the club is doing so poorly, of course, it's going to be looked at as like, everyone's just looking for someone to blame ultimately. You know, is it Klopp? Is it Pep? Is it the owners? Is it everybody? Is it the players? Is it, you know, Lauren the dinner lady? You know, if there is a Lauren the dinner lady, like, you know, it's all of these kind of various different things is going to play a part as to why, you know, Liverpool are doing so poorly this season. But for me, I just think that when it comes to Pep Lijnders, I just think, yes, I do think he has a very, very heavy influence. Forget about whether he's going to be primed to be the next Liverpool manager. I just think that Klopp trusts him so much that the influence that he's now having is almost becoming a little bit detrimental. But because you've trusted him in this situation, Klopp's a stubborn guy. We know what he's like. He's loyal to, you know, to a T. So of course he's going to say, nah, we keep going. It will click. It will click. You know, you look at the profile, like, and this is again another key thing. Look at the profile of players that we currently have in comparison to the profile of players that we used to have, especially when we won the Champions League and when we won the Premier League. It's totally different. Yes, we've still got Fabinho, we've still got Henderson, and we've still got, you know, your Oxes and your navigators kind of thing. But look at the fact that we've got a Thiago, we've got an Elliott, we've got a Carvalho, we've got a Jones in there. That's nothing like what we had when we won the Premier League, you know. And I felt like the style of play that we had in those teams was a lot more conducive to the players that we have. We're almost at a crossroads where, with the style of play that we've got and the players that we have, the two are not marrying up together. So if the two are not marrying up together, we're going to get results like Brentford, like Brighton, like Fulham, like Palace, like United, you know, like Arsenal, like Napoli. We're going to get these kind of performances throughout the season because the two are not marrying together. We need to, I'm not saying you bring Buvac back. I mean, that might be a possibility. I'm not even saying that. What I'm saying is we need to start finding a style that's a lot more conducive to the players that we do have. Is that something that Pep's got more of a control of over Klopp? Is Klopp almost taking a little bit of a back seat, which it seems like? You see it on the touchline and things like that, you know, in terms of like the barking out instructions and all these kind of various different things. Are we seeing Klopp taking more of a back seat and just almost being the figurehead, just being the face of it all? You know, but behind the scenes, it's Pep who's really, okay, want the team to play like this, want the team to do this. You know, we've seen what he said about Curtis Jones, you know, being compared to, who was it? Is it Pedri or Gavi? Either one, it makes no sense, you know. So, you know, all of these kind of things are things that are playing a part in what is going wrong at Liverpool Football Club, in my personal opinion. But again, is it just the Pep effect? We don't know. And this is where I play devil's advocate. Would you guys like to see Pep Lijnders as the next Liverpool manager? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think he's good enough to be the next Liverpool manager? Are you happy with the influence that reportedly he is currently having on the squad? Guys, let's have a conversation. Let me know. That's the end of my video for today. Like I said, please make sure you're liking. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm G and I am out.